According to the Eating Disorder Health Organization, 20% of those diagnosed with anorexia will die. Anorexia is a very deadly disorder, especially considering how common it is. According to the Eating Disorder Health Organization, 1 in every 200 women will experience this disorder, and 200,000 people in the United States experience this. Over the course of my life, I've become very familiar with this disorder just because of how common it is in today's society. For this speech, I've done additional research to better familiarize myself with it. Today, I would like to inform you about the severity of anorexia and the toll it has on people's mental, physical health, and relationships. Let's start with what anorexia is. Anorexia is a very severe disorder that should not be taken lightly. It is something that consumes the afflicted's life. As defined by the National Institute of Mental Health, anorexia is where someone consistently and deliberately deprives themselves of nutrition to an extremely low body weight, constantly wants to be thinner, and has a distorted perception of what they look like. It has an extremely high death rate because of the value the victims place on their disorder. The distortion, also known as body dysmorphia, causes them to think they look bigger than what they actually do, or look completely different than what they actually do. So, when people voice their concerns about them, like you look too thin, you look thinner today, have you been eating enough, they interpret these concerns as compliments. And they feel accomplished when they eat less one day in comparison to the other day. Like they want to eat less and less and less. This ego boost that it gives them becomes almost addicting. This ego boost, alongside the results of becoming thinner, causes it to be deadly and dangerous. In adolescence, it's the third most common chronic mental illness. This disorder normally develops in early teen years just because this is where insecurities begin to foster and how easily influenced people are at this age. There are 2 types of anorexia. The first is restrictive. This is where people limit their eating and are very particular about what they eat. The second is binge and purge. This disorder is where, or this anorexia, is where people limit their food intake but then have mass amounts of food intake at one time, but then the feelings of guilt cause them to make themselves purge. Purging can either be done with laxatives, causing them to excrete it that way, or they can make themselves throw up. And inducing the vomit can lead to teeth erosion and many other physical health things. Now that I've given a general overview of what anorexia is, let's talk about how physical health is affected. Anorexia causes an extreme decline in physical health due to the severe malnutrition. There are physical symptoms such as yellowing and dry skin, hair loss, reduced immune system, and energy levels are decreased drastically. And females can even lose their menstrual cycle, and this can be prolonged even after recovery, being infertile. There are various signs to look out for from person to person. Someone talks about excessive weight, like excessively about their weight in terms of they feel like they're too big, they need to lose more weight. It's just like they're constantly bringing the conversation back to that. They somehow always find a way. And they have a steady pattern of erratic eating. They continuously say, I've already eaten, or I'm not hungry, whenever food gets brought up. Someone who's experiencing this disorder, oddly enough, will often make excuses not to go out to eat. This has to do with the fear of consuming something they cannot directly calculate, or they fear they can't refrain themselves from eating. There's also an intense hyper-focus on food and what they're eating, when they're going to eat, how they're going to eat it. Both men and women are both affected by this disorder. This disorder in men and women often comes with mental illnesses such as anxiety and depression. And death is extremely common for both. For men, according to the National Eating Disorder Association, they make up approximately 25% of the people diagnosed and have a higher death rate. This is because of the late diagnosis. So the later you are diagnosed, the longer you have until you can go into recovery. This prolonged mental thought process of, I don't need to eat, I don't need to eat, I don't need to eat, takes longer to reverse if you haven't been diagnosed soon enough. With all these physical symptoms, this disorder also majorly affects mood and social ability, but there are treatment options. Anorexia causes isolation because it affects people's social ability. They have extreme mood swings due to being malnourished and constantly thinking about their body image. This constant thinking of when they're going to eat and their body image causes them to be irritable. Furthermore, these people isolate themselves because of their insecurities, continuous thoughts about eating, and their body image. This isolation and mood swings can majorly impact their ability to even maintain a job, and their interpersonal skills and relationships deteriorate. They can't maintain a job because they can't sustain the energy needed. And their skills of relationships, whether that be platonic or romantic, deteriorate because nobody wants to be with somebody or constantly talk to someone who is always irritable, constantly makes the conversation about food, and just causes a strain on the overall relationship. There are treatment options, however, but this disorder is very hard to cure. The treatments are more so to help the victims manage. There are inpatient treatment, which is very common, where the patient is hospitalized and given the proper nutrition needed. Or there's psychotherapy, which can be either done alone or with inpatient treatment. But psychotherapy allows for the victim to talk through these insecurities and body dysmorphia, and can help the therapist can help combat this with thoughts of reassurance and just really talk it through. In conclusion, anorexia is a very serious disorder that affects all aspects of a person's daily life. Hopefully my speech has informed you of the signs, symptoms, and severity of this disorder. This disorder affects the victim's whole life and will become something they struggle with even after treatment. However, there are treatment options, and with time, this disorder will be easier to manage. Thank you.